Chapter 1. No more sucking their blood. And Ran, you've disappointed me too much. The woman sat on the sofa, one arm around her trembling younger daughter, the other pointing at her elder daughter, and ran and cursed loudly. Xing Xing only changed your college application, and you're being so vicious. How can you be so malicious? Squinting at the mother and daughter in front of her, and Ran's heart grew colder. She tore up the admission letter in her hand and threw it hard at Xing Xing's head. I'm malicious. Mom, do you know where she changed my application to? Where? Xu Huifang truly didn't know what her younger daughter had changed her elder daughter's application to, and Ran sneered. Cat Ear Girl Club, Mom! If she likes that kind of filth herself, fine, but why did she change my application to that kind of training school? Just by the name, one could tell it was run by an entertainment establishment in the base, specifically for serving men. She had finally awakened her gathering skill and could have applied to the official ability user school of the base. Yet, her only chance to change her fate was ruined by her younger sister. What's wrong with the Cat Ear Girl Club? Xu Xingxing covered her swollen face and said aggrievedly, The income there is high, and there's no risk. You can also get to know high-ranking officials in the base. I was thinking of you. It's just a useless gathering ability. What's so great about it? Once she got a large sum of points and awakened her ability, she would definitely be 100 times stronger than in Ran. A flash of triumph crossed Xu Xingxing's eyes. According to the laws of Azure Sparrow Base, graduating students who turn 18 can only apply once, regardless of whether they pass or fail, or if they fill out the application incorrectly, there will be no second chance. She just wanted Ran to not be able to enter the Ability User Academy, to not become a superior person, and to always be beneath her. Xu Huifang's eyes lit up, and she nodded repeatedly. Xing Xing is right, and ran. Your sister is also thinking of your well-being. How dangerous is it to go into the wilderness every time? If you can be accepted by the club, your income will definitely be higher than gathering outside. When you earn money and buy gene awakening potions, your sister and brother can also awaken. Then you 3 siblings can support each other, and our family will have a firm foothold in Azure Sparrow Base. Being abandoned by that man had always been a heartache for Xu Huifang. She constantly wanted to rely on her children to make a name for themselves, and then fiercely slapped that heartless man's face. And Ran was almost amused by her biological mother and sister's words. To gain a firm foothold in a frontline defense like Azure Sparrow Base by selling their bodies. What were they thinking? She really wanted to crack open their heads and see if they were filled with sewage. And Ran didn't want to waste words with them, so she turned and went back to her room to pack. She wanted to leave this home, for no other reason than she didn't want them to drain her dry anymore. Just last night, and Ran suddenly had a dream. She dreamt that her sister had tampered with her exam application. After she resolutely refused to enroll, her sister and mother conspired to drug her and sell her to the Cat Ear Girl Club. She was locked in the club's basement, treated as a blood bag, having her blood drawn daily until her body completely broke down and no useful blood could be extracted, finally dying miserably. Coincidentally, she received her admission letter this morning, and the nightmare came true. Her sister had indeed tampered with her application. For her own safety, even if it meant renting a place, she couldn't stay in this home anymore. As she was packing, Xu Huifang and Xu Xingxing also followed her into the room. Seeing Ran packing her luggage, they quickly tried to stop her. What are you doing? Where do you want to go? And Ran snapped her backpack shut and said indifferently, The school is organizing graduates to do tasks outside the city. Otherwise, they won't issue graduation certificates. Xu Huifang felt a little relieved upon hearing this, and cautiously asked her elder daughter, Really? You're not lying to us, are you? What good would lying to you do? And Ran slung her backpack over her shoulder and walked out. Xu Huifang stopped her elder daughter again, asking suspiciously, Then you're not going to the Cat Ear Girl training school? No! Ayn Rand pushed her biological mother's hand away and opened the door to leave. "If you're not going to the training school, where do you plan to go?" Xu Huifeng clutched her elder daughter's hands, refusing to let go, and secretly gave her younger daughter a look. Xu Xingxing quickly ran over, anxiously saying, "Big sister, the Caddier Girl Club is really a great choice. You absolutely mustn't give up. If only they accepted ordinary people without abilities, I would have signed up myself." As she spoke, she reached out to grab Ayn Rand's backpack. Ayn Rand dodged sideways, swatting her hand away, and looked at the mother and daughter with icy eyes. "I'll say it again. I'm not going to that place. Don't provoke me, or you'll have to figure out your own living expenses." All this time, the family's living expenses had been earned by her going out of the city for missions, from the age of 10 until now, a full 8 years. Back then she didn't have abilities, and every time she returned she had to endure various injuries and pains caused by high pollution. Her skin festered, her cheeks swelled. If not for the school providing free treatment, she would have died long ago. Her sister and brother were only 2 years younger than her, yet they didn't even know where the outer city gate was. Even more ridiculous was that when her father left, he gave her mother a large sum of alimony to raise her daughter until adulthood. As a result, her biological mother not only didn't use the alimony on Ayn Rand, but also used the money to support a man and gave birth to a pair of twins with him. That's right, Xu Xingxing and her brother were Xu Huifeng's children with another man. The reason her father left was because he discovered his wife's infidelity, which led to their decisive separation. Yet, at that time, Xu Huifeng clung to Ayn Rand and refused to let go, so he left 18 years' worth of alimony and went to other bases. And the biological father of Xu Xingxing and her brother died when they were 5, reportedly in a brawl over a woman at a nightclub. All of this was told to Ayn Rand by her wet nurse, Aunt Xu. "Ayn Rand, listen to Mom." Xu Huifeng panicked and quickly tried to salvage the situation. "Mom is just worried you'll encounter danger outside. How about you don't go on missions anymore?" "No, it's already decided. I have to go." Ayn Rand stepped out, not even glancing at the mother and daughter. She hailed a taxi by the roadside and drove straight out of the inner city. Azure Sparrow Base had 2 defensive walls, dividing it into an inner city and an outer city. The inner city housed ability users and their families, as well as management personnel from various departments and their families, along with mercenaries and guardian soldiers. There were also many farming families, but the limited farmland in the inner city could hardly feed hundreds of thousands of people, so the base often organized ability users and civilians to go out and collect edible plants and animals. The outer city mostly consisted of impoverished ordinary people and refugees from other bases, with a population 2 to 3 times that of the inner city. Consequently, the public order in the outer city residential area was poor, and the death toll was higher. Beyond the high walls of the outer city lay vast wilderness and forests, where countless ferocious mutant beasts and mutated creatures lurked. It was a place where danger and opportunity coexisted. As long as one had good luck and strength, they could live quite comfortably in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. Ayn Rand paid 50 points at the city gate and climbed onto a collection team's truck. It was a box truck, and dozens of people were already sitting in its dilapidated compartment, mostly dressed in rags, also carrying baskets or backpacks. Their hard and difficult lives had left them with numb expressions. Some were severely contaminated by demonic energy, with festering skin, clearly the lowest stratum of the outer city populace. The truck rumbled for several hours, finally reaching its destination. Ayn Rand, carrying her backpack, jumped off the truck and looked around. A large expanse of open land with mutated plants completely cleared away. The ground was neatly leveled, and there was a very large compound with a 10-meter-high wall topped with an electric fence. In the center of the compound stood 9 circular earthen buildings. Each earthen building was about 100 meters in diameter, 20 meters high, divided into 6 floors, with dozens of rooms on each floor, capable of withstanding attacks from mutant beasts below level 3. This was the base's collection team camp, and also a gathering place for wilderness mercenaries. Various scavengers and collectors made their temporary homes here. Of course, those with money lived in the earthen buildings, while those without could only pitch a tent in the compound. Some who didn't even have tents would just find a corner to curl up for the night. Fortunately, it was the warm season, so they wouldn't freeze to death without shelter, though there were many mosquitoes and ants, so such people were rare. At worst, they would squeeze into a tent with companions. And Rand certainly wouldn't stay outside. As a newly adult girl, even an ability user, camping alone was very dangerous. She glanced at her wristwatch. She still had over 500 points, which should be enough for 1 or 2 nights' stay in an earthen building. If it exceeded 1 day, she could also exchange low-pollution animals and plants. This wasn't difficult, as she had the gathering skill and could obtain enough low-pollution mutated plants. This text is divided into 4 disaster periods. This wasn't difficult, as she had the gathering skill and could obtain enough low-pollution mutated plants. This text is divided into 4 disaster periods. First disaster, insect plague and beast tides, food shortage. Second disaster, freezing. Third disaster, floods, marine creatures coming ashore. Chapter 2, harvest. And Rand walked into an earthen building and showed her wristwatch at the counter. After 500 points were deducted, she received the key to the smallest single room. She entered the room and closed the door. She dumped everything from her backpack and began to sort through it, picking out what she would need for traveling in the wilderness. A dagger, a fine steel shovel, a protective suit, a pair of protective boots, a protective mask and helmet, a lighter, a bottle of insect repellent powder, a small fine steel pot, and a few nutrition bars. These were essential items that had to be worn when venturing deep into the dense forest. The rest of the items, such as a sleeping bag, a blanket, a few changes of clothes, and a pair of shoes, were left in the single room. If the harvest was good, she could stay for a few more days and upgrade her gathering skill. And Rand put on her protective boots, tied her leg wraps and wristbands, then donned her protective mask, and finally strapped the dagger to her wrist. There were many mutated insects in the wilderness. Bloodsuckers and parasites were even more of a nightmare for scavengers. Therefore, full body protection was very important. She stuffed her protective suit and other necessities into her large backpack, then sprayed insect repellent powder all over her body. With her backpack on, and Rand walked out of the camp courtyard and headed towards the wilderness. It was already afternoon, so she didn't plan to go deep, only to wander around the periphery, and she wasn't forming a team for now. And Rand walked and opened her attribute panel. That's right, her ability was a bit special. It came with a display panel that outsiders couldn't see. Name, and Rand. Bone age, 18. Race human. Physique, 10. Slightly stronger than an ordinary person. Agility, 5. Your speed is like a snail among talent users. Strength, 7. Your strength is completely mismatched with your identity as a talent user. Spirit, 10. Barely enough to use skills 10 times. If you don't rest in time after exhausting it, you might lose consciousness. Skill, Elementary Gathering Technique L4 1. Experience, 3,455 thousandths. Don't let the level 1 fool you. She had painstakingly leveled it up from 0, which took her over 2 years. The first upgrade also required 5,000 experience points, so when Rand guessed that as long as the gathering skill hadn't reached intermediate level, the experience required for upgrading would always be 5,000. She walked for a long time until the figures around her became sparse, and a large patch of dense mutated plants appeared before her. The denser the plants, the more dangerous it was, but the harvest was also relatively greater. And Rand scanned her surroundings and entered an uninhabited jungle. Calling it a jungle was an exaggeration. It was actually a vast expanse of giant vegetation, some reaching 7 or 8 meters high. In this era of the wasteland, all kinds of creatures were abnormally tall and fierce, and even small grasses and vines had evolved hunting skills. The mutated insects were even crazier. Not only had their size evolved, but their appetites had also grown, and some would even actively attack humans. However, Nran learned from historical books that creatures before the catastrophe were very weak and harmless. Even a 3-year-old child could crush a group of ants. Now, the ants were 100 times larger than before the catastrophe, and their biting force and venom could instantly kill a mutant beast rabbit 1.5 meters long. Carefully avoiding a giant spider web, Nran soon discovered a large clump of mutated wild greens. Without needing to scan with her wristwatch, she recognized them as mutated shepherd's purse. Each plant 2 meters tall, topped with fluffy white flowers, some already bearing seeds, and with basal stems thicker than a large bowl. However, black mist permeated the stems and leaves of this clump of shepherd's purse, making it look particularly eerie. Its contamination value was estimated to be no less than 300. As early as 100 years ago, the federal government had quantified the demonic contamination value on this planet and provided reasonable recommendations. For example, data between 1 and 10 was considered zero contamination, 11 to 30, low contamination, 31 to 70%, moderate contamination, usable in moderation, 71 to 100, high contamination. Consuming it wouldn't cause immediate death, but would 100% lead to various diseases. However, highly contaminated materials with a value under 100 could be used, like in the construction of Azure Sparrow Base, where most of the wood for houses and furniture came from such materials. But anything exceeding 300 had to be quickly avoided, as there was a risk of contamination even by being close. Nran initially didn't want to go, as her protective suit might not even guard against super-high demonic energy infiltration. But there were no more suitable gathering targets nearby, so she quickly approached and immediately used her gathering skill. A white light flashed between her fingers. Ding! 1 spirit consumed, gathering successful, experience +2. You obtained a bunch of slightly better-tasting wild shepherd's purse, demonic contamination value 55. Nran smiled, quickly tucked the shepherd's purse into her backpack, and cast the skill again. Ding! 1 spirit consumed. Gathering successful, experience +2, you obtained a bunch of slightly better-tasting wild shepherd's purse, demonic contamination value 54. Ding! 1 spirit consumed. Obtained a bunch of slightly better-tasting wild shepherd's purse. Hey! She didn't expect that gathering mutated plants with extremely high demonic contamination value would double the experience. Seeing that she only had 1 point of spirit left, Nran decisively stopped. She found a sparsely vegetated spot nearby to sit and rest for a while, removed her mask, took out a nutrition bar to chew, and sprayed herself with insect repellent powder again. A few people not far away frequently glanced at her, appearing eager to try something. Nran acted as if she hadn't seen them, drawing her Shanliang dagger from her wrist to wipe it. This was a high-grade item she had bought for 1,000 points, capable of cutting through iron like mud, incredibly sharp. Not to mention stabbing a person. Even if a level 1 mutant beast came, she could pierce through their tough hide. Sure enough, those people gradually moved away. After finishing a nutrition bar and resting for a while, her spirit recovered by 2 points, making a total of 3 points with the remaining 1. Nran thought for a moment and decided to find another place to try her luck. If she encountered mutated medicinal herbs, they would be much more cost-effective than shepherd's purse. After traversing the jungle for over 10 minutes, she finally saw a giant large thistle. Nran looked up. This large thistle was about 5 meters tall, and the diameter of its root stem was almost a meter, too large for one person to embrace. It could no longer be considered a herbaceous plant. This was the first time she had seen such a huge, large thistle. She used her wristwatch to test it slightly, and the demonic contamination value surprisingly reached over 500. Nran was stunned. No wonder no one had dug up this precious hemostatic herb. It turned out the demonic contamination value was too high. The wristwatch showed such high contamination just by being close, If measured with its sap, wouldn't it reach over 1,000? And Ran quickly moved away, checking her entire body to prevent any oversight. Being contaminated by such powerful demonic energy was no joke. One careless mistake could cost her life. Even if she didn't die on the spot, the exorbitant medical fees were something she couldn't afford now that she had graduated and no longer had the school to back her up. After steadying her mind, and Ran approached the large thistle, she reached out to gather. Ding! One spirit consumed, gathering failed, and Ran was bewildered. What happened? Why did it fail? Could it be that this large thistle was very high level? And Ran knew that if the gathering target exceeded the skill level by 3 times, there was a chance of failure. That meant this large thistle was at least level 4. Thinking of this, and Ran's eyes sparkled. Level 4 mutated medicinal herbs, that's considered high-grade medicinal herbs, sold by the gram. She struck it rich. Too bad she can't gather it now. But leaving like this would be too uneconomical. She had already lost 1 spirit, so there was no reason to give up so easily. And Ran pondered for a moment, chin in hand, then decisively drew her dagger and cut off a section of the large thistle's branches and leaves. Dragging the giant, meter-long branch and leaves to a secluded spot, she reached out to gather. Ding! 1 spirit consumed, gathering successful, experience +10. You obtained a level 4 mutated large thistle, demonic contamination value 68, can be used to make advanced hemostatic potions. And Ran examined the meter-long emerald green large thistle branch and leaves in her hand, laughing like a goose. Meanwhile, the gathered object on the ground had turned grayish-black, like a rotten, withered leaf. Chapter 3. Getting Rich. Seeing no one around, and Ran quickly bent the large thistle she held, crumpled it up, and stuffed it into her backpack. She immediately hurried back. She only had a little spirit left, and the items in her bag were too precious. It was unwise to linger in the wilderness, lest she attract unnecessary trouble. However, she hadn't walked far when a burst of noisy footsteps rushed toward her, and Ran's heart tightened, and she immediately hid behind a large blade of grass. Peeking through the gaps between the wide leaves toward the source of the sound, she saw a group of raggedly dressed people rushing toward the direction where she had just gathered herbs, as if they had discovered some extraordinary treasure. And Ran breathed a sigh of relief. Once the people had gone far away, she quickly left. 8 years of experience roaming the wasteland told her never to join the commotion or try to seize anything from others, or she would die miserably. She had to be extremely cautious upon returning. Every person she passed might attack her, and Ran carefully navigated the wasteland, her eyes constantly observing her surroundings with vigilance. Suddenly, a hand, dry and thin as firewood, reached out from the nearby bushes and grabbed her backpack, and Ran was startled. She quickly slipped off her backpack, turned around, and lunged forward. The dagger in her hand was already plunged into the arm of the attacking man. "Ah!" the man screamed and subconsciously let go of the backpack, and Ran seized the opportunity to snatch it back, then kicked the man. Her strength was considerable, and since the man was very thin, he was instantly kicked a great distance away. The man immediately gave up after his ambush failed. Ignoring the pain in his arm, he quickly scrambled on all fours into the nearby thorn bush. The thorns were like steel needles, but he paid them no mind. He was clearly a ruthless individual. Naturally, and Ran wouldn't foolishly follow him in. She snorted, grabbed her backpack, and turned to leave. This sort of thing happened frequently. She had experienced it countless times over the past 8 years. It took her 6 or 7 years to go from being robbed initially to gradually fighting back. Later, she awakened her ability, and her physique improved significantly. She gradually progressed from being weak with 5 physique and 3 strength to being able to defeat an ordinary man on her own. But that was limited only to ordinary people. When encountering other ability users, she still couldn't resist them. After all, the ability she awakened was the gathering skill, which was a life support type, and her overall attributes were far lower than those ability users specializing in strength or speed. And ran wildly the entire way, not daring to stop and rest even when she was breathless from exhaustion. It was at this moment that she realized improving her speed was imperative. This time she was lucky that the attacker was alone, and a weakling who was almost starving to death. If 2 or 3 people had teamed up against her, she would have been doomed. After more than 10 minutes, she could see the earthen building of the camp in the distance, and only then did Anran relax. Walking into the camp yard, she saw many people gathered, most of whom had returned from scavenging and gathering, and several were familiar faces. Anran decided not to go over and greet anyone for the time being and went straight back to the small house she rented. After closing the door, she took off her helmet and protective suit. The clothes underneath were soaked with sweat. After lying on the small bed and resting for a long time, Anran sat up, pondering how to deal with the large thistle in her bag. Exchanging it at the camp was definitely not cost-effective, but making a special trip back to the city seemed even more troublesome. Because the teams returning to the city were also unsafe, many morally bankrupt desperados specifically robbed the trucks going back to the city. After all, those returning to the city were fat sheep, whose backpacks weren't stuffed full of harvested loot. Forget it. I'll just exchange it at the camp. Running back and forth wastes valuable time. She wanted to level up quickly, otherwise, without the attribute point bonuses, she wasn't safe at all, and Ran changed into dry clothes to avoid catching a cold. She put on a mask, and only then did she put on her backpack. She went downstairs to the exchange hall, waited in line for a while, and finally, it was her turn. Every exchange point here had partitions, like the glass booths of a bank's self-service deposit machine, providing exchangers with maximum privacy and security. The only difference was that sitting on the other side of the exchange window were base staff members. And Ran sat down, took out all 9 bundles of shepherd's purse from her backpack. Together they weighed 9 jinn, yes, 1 jinn per bundle, and she pushed them all into the exchange window. The staff member was stunned to see so much neatly bundled shepherd's purse. Who could find edible plants that were so uniform? It was unbelievable, almost like they came off a factory assembly line. The staff member took a specialized measuring device and tested each one, then tore off a little leaf to taste it, saying with undisguised envy, "You certainly have good luck." In this season, it was truly difficult to obtain so many tender leafy greens, because most mutated wild vegetables had grown old, becoming tough, fibrous, and incredibly bitter, completely inedible. Even if the demonic contamination value was low, bitterness meant toxicity, and eating it would still kill people. However, the shepherd's purse she brought had no bitterness, was incredibly fresh and tender, and the demonic contamination value wasn't high, making it genuinely rare. But no matter how rare, it must follow the base's purchasing standards. The staff member took out a price list and quoted a price based on the contamination index and assessment criteria. These are all moderately contaminated. Our purchase price here is 10 points per jinn. And Ran clicked her tongue and asked irritably, "Then how many points is a nutrition bar here?" She remembered the base exchanged 30-something index green leafy vegetables for 15 points per jinn, and even the worst quality was 12 points per jinn. Here, the price was directly slashed by 30%. 18 points, the staff member replied. That was 3 points more expensive than the base. And Ran rubbed her forehead and waved her hand. "I know. Just calculate the total." "A total of 90 points. Should I transfer it directly to your account?" the staff member asked. And Ran nodded, extended her wristwatch to scan, and 90 points were credited to her account. She then took out the large thistle, which was crumpled into a large ball, and placed it on the exchange window. "This is a level 4 mutated large thistle. How many points can I exchange it for?" Level 4 mutated large thistle. The staff member's eyes widened, and he quickly took out an instrument to test it. It really is a level 4 mutated large thistle, and the index is only 68. He was a little excited and immediately called over a colleague to help authenticate it, afraid of misjudging and giving too many points, as his meager salary wouldn't be enough to cover the loss. After testing it again and confirming it was correct, The staff member gave the price. Our level 4 mutated medicinal herbs here are 2 points per gram. Yours weighs 2,252 grams in total. Do you want to exchange it? Wow, that's cutting off more than half the value directly. No exchange. The price is too low. And Rand reached out to pull back the large thistle, pretending to leave. Another staff member, who looked like a supervisor, quickly called out to her, Hey, don't leave. Sit down. Why is a young lady in such a hurry? If you have any dissatisfaction, we can discuss it slowly. And Rand sat back down, taking the opportunity, and said coldly, What is there to discuss? My large thistle index is 68, which is a moderate value. How can you trick me by using the price for a high value? Do you think I'm stupid? She had attended school for a few years, and the value of mutated plants was compulsory learning in class. If this person thought he could fool her, he had no chance. The staff member who looked like a supervisor laughed awkwardly. Apologies. Little E is new, inexperienced, and got the price wrong. How about this? I'll handle the exchange for you. Saying this, he pushed little Lee aside and smiled at Anran. The level 4 mutated large thistle with a moderate value is indeed different from one with a high value. I see that yours is of good quality, so I'll authorize 6 points per gram for you. How does that sound? Seeing the young lady didn't speak, the supervisor continued, This is the highest price we offer here, the same as the internal price at the base. Even if you took it back to the base, it wouldn't be higher than this. And Rand pondered for a moment, then nodded in agreement. All right, I agree. Saying this, she handed the large thistle back into the exchange window. The supervisor was overjoyed but didn't show it, quickly settling the bill for the young lady. Soon, Anran's wristwatch showed a notification. 13,512 points credited to her account. Seeing so many points, Anran was ecstatic inside. A single branch and leaf exchanged for this much. If she had gathered the entire plant, wouldn't she have struck it rich? Chapter 4, Slipping Away. Now that she had money, she needed to prepare the necessities for going to the wilderness. Items like insect repellent powder and nutritional bars were upgraded to mid to high grade, and she prepared 1 bottle each of various injury medicines and antidotes. There was also the hemostatic medicine. The mutated insects in the wilderness were too insidious. Some could cause wounds to bleed continuously after a bite. If too much blood was lost, death was certain. Before, she was short on points and was stingy even when buying potions, but now that she was financially comfortable, she naturally prepared everything she needed. After all, it concerned her own life. Therefore, Anran immediately spent over 3,000 points, exchanging them for 1 bottle of primary hemostatic medicine, 1 bottle of intermediate antidote, 2 bottles of insect repellent powder, and 10 high-grade nutritional bars. This was the first time Anran had bought such high-grade nutritional bars, and since she was hungry, she took one and took a bite. She had to admit, it was savory and sweet, tasted good, and seemed to have some kind of meat mixed in. Thinking of meat, Anran immediately felt hungry for it. Fortunately, there was a cafeteria inside the camp. She would go try it later. Do you have potions here that restore mental energy? Thinking of her spirit value, which was only 10 points, Anran asked. Spirit should be similar to mental energy, since ability users also consume mental energy when using their abilities. Previously, her account points were limited, and she never had a chance to verify this, but this time, she had to buy 2 doses to test it out. If it really worked, her skill experience might level up sooner. Yes, we do, the little leader replied with a smile. Anran, how much does it cost? A bottle of primary mental strength recovery potion is 3,000 points, and the intermediate one is 5,000. What? That expensive? Anran's eyes widened. The little leader quickly explained. It's not expensive, not expensive. These rare potions are all officially standardized prices. The base also charges the same as here. There is absolutely no difference. Anran hesitated for a moment, then bought them. A bottle of primary mental energy potion and a bottle of intermediate potion instantly wiped out most of her points. Fortunately, there was still some left, which should be enough for her accommodation and food. And Ran then went to the Tulu bar counter to pay for 2 more days of accommodation. Her account points had 1,020 remaining. She took her backpack back to the single room, locked the door, and went downstairs to the cafeteria. Walking out of the Tulu, she saw the camp courtyard bustling with people, men and women, old and young. Judging by their clothing, equipment, and condition, most were impoverished secondary citizens from the outer city. Some were setting up tents in the designated tent area of the camp, while others were cooking over fires in the open space. The other side of the camp was the parking area, and the spots were mostly full. And Ran raised her wristwatch to look. It was already 6 in the afternoon, so the cafeteria should be open. The main camp cafeteria was inside another Tulu. There weren't many people at the moment, and the cafeteria staff had already placed several large food basins on the counter. And Ran glanced over. There was nothing good to eat, just vegetable noodles and porridge, the kind with more vegetables than noodles. 10 points for a large bowl. She had been eating it for 8 years, and was sick of it. So she went directly to the ability user's small cafeteria. As soon as she walked into the small cafeteria, she smelled a rich aroma of meat that made her mouth water. Several people in camouflage uniforms were queuing up. They looked like members of a mercenary group. And Ran queued behind them and bought herself a serving of braised mutated rabbit meat and a portion of rice, totaling 350 points. In the past, she could never have afforded such expensive food, because her biological mother would immediately transfer the points from her wristwatch, leaving her only enough for the next trip out of the city or for primary nutritional bars. Of course, the money for essential equipment would also be left behind. Otherwise, if this elder daughter who risked her life died outside, no one would earn money for her to spend. At that time, she was a minor and completely helpless, simply because her biological mother was her guardian and had full authority over everything she owned. Speaking of which, this involved some shady maneuvering by her biological mother's younger brother. That uncle worked at the base bank, and without Ran's knowledge, secretly set up a Qinyuan Tong account for his sister and his minor niece. So a few days ago, after Ran turned 18, she immediately went to the base bank to cancel the Qinyuan Tong. She also warned the bank manager that if anyone privately changed her account without her permission, she would report them to the base police department and demand compensation for all her lost points. Now she could spend her points however she wanted and eat whatever she pleased. Once she got rich, she would buy a small house in the inner city and live her own life. As for her biological mother and her half-siblings, they could do whatever they wanted. And Ran took a bite of the braised rabbit meat. The rich, savory flavor exploded in her mouth, greatly satisfying her taste buds. Then she scooped up a mouthful of the crystal-clear white rice. Wow, the taste was absolutely incredible. Braised meat with rice, it was explosively delicious. Quickly finishing a large bowl of white rice with the rabbit meat, and Ran went to get another bowl and mixed the remaining sauce at the bottom of the plate into the rice. While she was happily indulging, someone suddenly patted her shoulder. She turned her head and saw that it was her classmates, Zhang Xiaodong and Zhang Xiaoqiao. And Ran's expression gradually stiffened. Zhang Xiaodong walked around the table and sat down on the other side, asking with a smile, "Why didn't you go back to the city?" Usually, when Ran came to the wilderness for missions, she would come in the morning and return in the afternoon, never staying overnight at the camp, and certainly never eating in the small cafeteria. It seemed the sun had risen from the west today. And Ran swallowed the food in her mouth and said flatly, "If I don't want to go back, I won't." Her relationship with these two was complicated, so her tone was inevitably cold. Zhang Xiaodong seemed unconcerned and still asked gently, "When did you arrive? Have you formed a team yet?" Seeing his persistent questioning, Ran suddenly felt that her rice mixed with sauce didn't taste very good anymore. but since she couldn't hit a smiling face, and he used to be her class monitor, she answered truthfully, "Not yet." "Then join our team," Zhang Xiaodong said. "We can check how much your gathering skill has improved." His voice was gentle but forceful, adopting an older brotherly tone. Anyone who didn't know the truth could easily be fooled by his friendly demeanor. And Rand's mouth twitched, and she immediately shook her head, refusing. "No, I don't plan on forming a team right now." She didn't want to team up with this person, much less be free labor. She recalled that she had joined their team once, but when the spoils were distributed, she only received 2 handfuls of wild vegetables with a moderate demonic contamination index. This person had vehemently claimed that their small team distributed according to contribution, and in Ran, having the lowest combat power, could only receive the least. If she hadn't just transferred from the regular class to the ability user class at that time and didn't want to cause trouble, she would have flipped out right there. Since then, Enran had kept her distance from Zhang Xiaodong and his group. Seeing Enran refuse him, Zhang Xiaodong was displeased. But he remained kind and amiable on the surface. "You're going into the wild alone? That's too dangerous." Zhang Xiaoxiao interjected appropriately. "Exactly. Recently, many gathering teams have been attacked by demonic species. Even mercenary teams don't dare to camp outside anymore. For a gathering ability user like you, who has no combat power, going alone is just courting death." And Rand silently ate her food, scooped the last bit of rice into her mouth, and slowly stood up. "Thank you for the warning. I'll be heading back now. You two take your time." Just as Zhang Xiaodong's 2 other teammates brought their food over, and Ran quickly slipped away. Seeing Enran run off, Zhang Xiaodong immediately darkened his expression. "Ungrateful." He turned to Zhang Xiaoxiao and said, "Later, tell a few small teams not to accept Enran. I want to see how a mere gatherer like her can go into the wilderness alone to complete missions." Chapter 5. The Schemes of the Biological Mother and Sister. Enran didn't know that Zhang Xiaodong had already started targeting her, and she returned to her own living quarters on her own. She packed 2 pieces of underwear, went to the public bath to shower, and also filled 2 kettles with boiled water, spending all but 2 points of her account balance. After drying her short hair, she had just lain down on the bed when her wristwatch started beeping incessantly. She picked it up and saw that it was her biological mother. And Rand frowned, thought for a moment, then answered the call. Xu Huifeng's image appeared, and as soon as she saw her daughter, she started scolding. "Enran, where on earth have you been? Why didn't you come home?" Enran said indifferently, "In the wilderness. What's the point of coming home?" "In the wilderness? Don't you always come back every night?" Xu Huifeng asked, suppressing her anger. Enran, "It's inconvenient to go back and forth, and it costs money for transportation. I won't be coming back anymore." "What? Not coming back anymore?" Xu Huifeng grew anxious. "Then what about us? Your younger siblings are starting school in about 10 days, and their tuition hasn't been paid yet." "What do their affairs have to do with me? I'm not their mother." Enran said, directly interrupting her biological mother. "I have things to do, hanging up." She then ended the call. Xu Huifeng saw her eldest daughter hang up the phone and cursed angrily. "Beast! Ungrateful wretch! I worked so hard to raise her, and now that her wings are hardened, she wants to abandon us." Xu Xingxing, who was beside her, also had an unpleasant expression. She had already made arrangements with someone. If she sent her sister to the Cattier Girl Club, they would give her an ability awakening potion. If her sister never came back, wouldn't this plan fall through? No. She must make Enran come back soon. Xu Xingxing sent a message to Enran. "Sis, Mom is sick with anger because of you. Come back and see her quickly. My brother and I don't need you to pay our tuition." She clicked send, but a red exclamation mark appeared. She had actually been blacklisted by her. Xu Xingxing's face twisted with rage. After thinking for a moment, she took her mother's wristwatch and sent a message, but it was still a red exclamation mark. She was greatly surprised and quickly told Xu Huifeng, "Mom, Big Sister has blacklisted both of us." "What?" Xu Huifang snatched back her wristwatch and sent another message. The exclamation mark showed that she had indeed been blacklisted. "Beast!" Xu Huifang was furious, her whole body trembling with anger. "I'd rather raise a dog than her." Just now, when she tried to transfer money from Anran's account, she realized that the damned girl had unbound the family link. She didn't believe it and called her younger brother, who worked at the bank. Her brother said that the family link had been unbound a few days ago. This damned little beast is just like her biological father, both cold-hearted and ungrateful wretches. Xu Huifang cursed for a while, and a strong fear spread through her heart. What to do? If that dead girl really abandoned them, who would her family of 3 rely on in the future? How would Xingxing and Chen Chen live? As she thought, Xu Huifang burst into tears, recounting her past misfortunes while crying. Seeing her biological mother collapse, Xu Xingxing's eyes darted around, and she quickly voiced her idea. "Mom, since Big Sister is so heartless, why not solve it once and for all? We can use her to get a sum of money for your retirement, so you don't have to constantly cater to her mood." Xu Huifang paused at her words, stopping her tears. "What do you mean?" Xu Xingxing leaned into Xu Huifang's ear and whispered, "I heard that the Cat Ear Girl Club pays high prices for young women with abilities. For someone like Big Sister, they're willing to give 100,000 points. Actually, it was 200,000, but she had to keep half for purchasing the awakening potion." Xu Huifang's eyes widened. "That much? What do they buy them for?" Even if it was for entertaining guests, they wouldn't directly offer such a high price as 100,000, would they? They won't take her life after all. Xu Xingxing smiled. "Then we'll use this money for tuition, and the rest will be yours." Xu Huifang's eyes gradually brightened, but then she hesitated. "What if your sister isn't willing? If she causes a scene and offends the customers, won't the club make us pay compensation?" Xu Xingxing pouted. "Mom, do you really think everyone in the club is a good person? Someone like her, what kind of trouble could she cause? If it doesn't work, beat her once. If it still doesn't work, beat her a few more times. Can her flesh and blood contend with iron rods and stun guns?" Xu Huifang thought about it and felt it made a lot of sense. When she was young and reckless, she also worked in such places and knew how deep the waters were inside. It was just that she later met a powerful ability user from an outer base and managed to get out in time. But even in such places, they wouldn't immediately pay 100,000 for a person, would they? Xu Huifang was completely puzzled. If she couldn't figure it out, she wouldn't think about it. Now, her concern was how to carry out this matter when her eldest daughter had blacklisted their entire family. "Alas, I don't know when your eldest sister will come back. You're starting school soon, and I don't know if she'll make it in time. Xingxing, do you have any of her classmates' contact numbers? Or perhaps ask someone to pass a message to your sister, telling her to come home early." For this, Xu Xingxing already had a plan. She quietly said, "Mom, give me some money, and I'll hire a few people to go to the wilderness and bring Big Sister back." Upon hearing about money, Xu Huifang frowned. "How much? I'm telling you now, too much isn't worth it. I don't have much left in my hands. Give 2,000 first, and another 2,000 when the job is done." To be safe, Xu Xingxing planned to hire 2 mercenaries, exchanging money for goods when the time came. "What? 4,000? No, that's too much." Xu Huifang felt a pang of heartache and quickly said, "How about tomorrow you and Mom go to the wilderness together to find your sister? We can save 4,000 then." "Are you kidding?" Their family's monthly living expenses were only 800 points. That would be half a year's worth of food and daily necessities gone at once. She couldn't bear it. Xu Xingxing also couldn't bear to spend 4,000 points, but she absolutely couldn't risk going to the wilderness. "Mom, we don't even know which camp Big Sister is in. Where would we look?" Xu Huifang fell silent. After a long struggle, she transferred 2,000 points to her second daughter and instructed, "Go directly to the mercenary group's mission hall to hire people. Make sure to sign a formal contract. Otherwise, if they take the money and don't do the job, wouldn't we lose 2,000 points for nothing?" "Got it." Xu Xingxing happily ran out of her biological mother's room and went back to her own room to make a call. The next day, Ran got up early, washed up in the washroom, put on her protective suit, and left with her backpack. The weather today was a bit gloomy, and swirling black mist had seeped into the camp courtyard. Along with the black mist, countless flying insects also rolled in, burrowing straight into people's eyes, mouths, and ears. Those living in the courtyard suffered. Some of them weren't wearing protective suits, their bodies covered in flying insects, and they fled in fear into the earthen building seeking refuge. Ran bypassed the crowd, walked out of the large courtyard, and headed straight for the direction of the large thistle from yesterday. She wanted to harvest that entire large thistle while not many people were out, but the further she walked into the wilderness, the denser the black mist became, forcing her to slow her pace. This kind of weather was most prone to rabid mutant beasts, and even mutated plants would become agitated and crazy by the insects in the black mist. Ran paid attention to her steps and surroundings, sweeping her pointed iron rod, which served as a walking stick, back and forth. Suddenly, a giant black python was coiling and rolling ahead, its tail as thick as a bowl, heavily slammed down beside Ran. Chapter 6. Encountering Danger. Ran was startled and immediately turned to run. Fortunately, the giant snake didn't give chase. It only twisted and struggled in place, crushing the surrounding mutated plants into fragmented chaos. Ran quickly hid behind a clump of thick mutated plants, quietly observing. Upon seeing this, her sense of crisis eased slightly. It turned out that there was a large wound on the black python's body, and many insects were in the damaged area. Those insects, like maggots on bone, kept moving in and out of the wound. Ran's hair stood on end from the sight. She quickly pulled out a bottle of insect repellent, sprayed it on her protective suit, and swiftly detoured towards the large thistle. More than half an hour later, she finally saw the level 4 large thistle again, but it was covered in black insects, making it look exceptionally eerie. Ran hesitated for a long time, but still decided to cut off a branch for gathering skill, as such high-grade mutated medicinal herbs were hard to come by. She first checked her protective suit and helmet, then tightened her leg wraps and wristbands, before approaching with her dagger. With one cut, black insects rustled down, some directly pouncing on Ran. After a few more cuts, a huge branch fell. Ran dragged it a distance away, first sprayed insect repellent to drive away many flying insects, and then used her gathering skill. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering successful. Experience +10. You obtained 1 level 4 large thistle branch. Demonic contamination value 63. Ran smiled, quickly balled up the large thistle in her hand, stuffed it into her backpack, and continued to cut large thistle branches. After harvesting 9 large thistles with moderate values, her spirit was down to 1 point. Ran took out a bottle of basic mental energy potion and gulped it down. Immediately, her mind cleared, and looking at her spirit value, it had returned to full. Ran was overjoyed and quickly gathered 9 more times, obtaining 9 level 4 large thistles with moderate values. Seeing her spirit return to 1 point again, and with about 10 branches still at the top of the large thistle, Ran looked up and observed for a while, and a thought suddenly came to her mind. She took out her only remaining intermediate mental energy potion and drank it. Her spirit instantly refilled, even overflowing by 2 points. Ran ignored her surprise and quickly used her gathering skill on the tree trunk. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering successful. Experience +20. You obtain 10 mutated large thistle branches. Demonic contamination value 52. Looking at the large thistle branches in her hand, 70 to 80 centimeters long, Ran smiled. It was indeed as she guessed. The shortest branches at the very top could really be harvested all at once. However, the main trunk of this large thistle hadn't withered yet. Did that mean it could be harvested again? And Ran reached out and used her gathering skill again. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering successful, experience plus 50. You obtained 1 level 4 energy crystal. After absorption, it can permanently increase spirit by 2 points. It can do that. And Ran gazed at the dazzling pigeon egg-sized crystal in her palm, her heart blooming with joy. Absorb? She silently chanted in her mind. The crystal gradually shrank, turning into a wisp of gray-black powder in an instant. At the same time, Ran's spirit value also changed from 10 to 12 or 12. Even the 2 points of spirit she had used were replenished. Presumably the intermediate mental energy potion she had drunk earlier was still continuously restoring her energy. What was she waiting for? And Ran put on her backpack and hurried back, harvesting anything of even slight value she encountered along the way. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering successful. Experience plus 1. You obtained 1 mutated nightshade chewed by insects. Demonic contamination value 31. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering successful. You obtained 1 dilapidated mutated daisy. Experience plus 2. Demonic contamination value 32. More than 10 minutes later, as her base spirit began to deplete, and Ran stopped her aimless gathering and hurried on her way. At this moment, the black mist gradually dispersed, but the insects attached to the mutated vegetation still remained. They were frantically devouring the plants, and their size gradually changed, becoming several times larger than when they first appeared. And Ran frowned, an unreasoning panic rising in her heart. If these swarming insects were to spread into the base, what kind of disaster would occur? She observed her surroundings as she walked, quickening her pace. Unconsciously, she reached the vicinity of the black python again, and immediately saw that it was motionless, seemingly dead. Countless chopstick-length maggots moved in and out of the black python's wounds and mouth, clearly indicating that this massive body had been hollowed out. And Ran felt her scalp tingle, and then saw dense, long maggots rushing directly towards her at an incredibly fast speed, scaring her into turning and running. As she ran, she sprayed insect repellent on herself and her head. After finally escaping this area, Ran was stunned by the sight before her. All around were struggling mutated beasts. Some were already dead, while others were scurrying about frantically. These were mutated squirrels, mutated rabbits, mutated hedgehogs, mutated snakes, and mutated birds, all uncommon near the camp. Some were bitten by insects, others entangled by mutated plants, frantically struggling to survive. Even a millstone-sized mutated spider was being chased by many mutated insects, so scared that it spun silk to bury itself. And Ran kept moving, running faster, and accidentally tripped over something, instantly falling to the ground. Looking back, she saw a gray-green vine already wrapped around her ankle, slowly coiling upwards. And Ran raised her dagger and swung it, just cutting the one on her foot when another flew from somewhere, instantly wrapping around the arm holding her dagger. Before she could react, several more vines flew over, directly coiling around her body, tightening around her limbs. It was over. It was over. And Ran struggled for a long time but couldn't break free. Instead, the vines tightened more and more, slowly dragging her towards a deep hole in the distance. Her head buzzed and a strong fear rose in her heart. Was she going to die here? Just as she was in despair, 2 people, a man and a woman, suddenly ran out from behind a distant exotic plant. They rushed to Ran, swung their knives, and in a few strokes cut through the vines restraining Ran. "Get up quickly!" The woman grabbed Ran, tore off the vines on her body, and half pulled, half dragged her away. The man covered the rear, his machete swinging, leaving after images as he cleared the flying mutated vines. The 3 ran for 2 li before slowing their pace, and only then did Ran feel like she had escaped death. "Thank you." And Ran, her shock somewhat settled, immediately thanked the 2. When she clearly saw the woman's face inside her mask, She was immediately surprised. Sankey? This was a teammate she had once teamed up with, and also a schoolmate from junior high. She was a very good girl. However, this girl stopped studying in her second year of junior high. It seemed she moved to the outer city with her parents, and the two hadn't seen each other for several years. Sankey was also very happy to see Anran and immediately hugged her. I didn't expect it to be you. Why are you alone in the wilderness? Anran didn't dare to say she was alone to gather large thistle, so she lied. I got separated from my teammates. Luckily, I met you and you saved me. Sankey chuckled, patting her shoulder. It's fate. Come, let me introduce you. This is my teammate Yu Gang. He was the one who spotted you first. Anran thanked Yu Gang again. Thank you, brother Yu Gang, for saving me. Yu Gang waved his hand. No need to thank me, it was nothing. He then added, let's hurry back to the camp. I feel something is very wrong. Many mutated animals and plants are starting to become agitated. I'm afraid a large-scale insect tide might occur. Chapter 7. Energy cores can also yield attributes. Anran nodded, and the three quickly rushed back to the camp. As they neared the camp, they saw many ability users and mercenaries, all neatly equipped, clearing out insects and frenzied mutant beasts. Some sprayed with flamethrowers, while others conjured fire abilities from thin air. Those fiery snakes danced in the sky, igniting large swaths of insects and mutated flora and fauna. The air was filled with the pungent, burnt smell of incinerated protein. Hey, do you have an ability? Sankey nudged and ran with her elbow, looking enviously at the ability users. Anran nodded. Yes, it's a collection ability. Sankey's eyes widened. You really have an ability. No wonder you dared to go into the wilderness alone. Anran gave a wry smile. My ability doesn't have much combat power. It can only collect some mutated plants. That's still impressive. Sankey sighed as she walked. I wish I had awakened an ability too. It doesn't matter what kind. Then I could take my whole family to live in the inner city. Anran hoisted the heavy backpack on her shoulder, curiously examining Sankey. You don't have an ability? I thought you were quite strong. She had just been able to drag her along at a sprint, and her backpack contained over 100 jinn of items. Sankey chuckled. Did you forget? I was born with great strength. It's not an ability. She then pointed at Yu Gang. Among us, only Brother Yu is an ability user, a speed type. He only awakened a couple of months ago. Anran nodded, glancing at Yu Gang. He was tall and thin, and it was hard to tell his age because he wore a mask and helmet. The two chatted for a while longer. Then Anran couldn't help but ask, Sankey, why did you suddenly drop out of school back then? Sankey scratched her head. Because Dad was severely contaminated during a mission, and our family didn't have money for treatment. Mom had to sell our house in the inner city to pay for his medical care, but in the end, Dad still passed away. Actually, her family not only sold their house, but also their inner city residency permit and all valuable items at home, eventually having to move to the outer city. Anran was silent, then held out her wristwatch and said, Let's add each other as friends. Next time we go to the wilderness, we can team up. Okay. Sankey happily handed over her wristwatch, and the two added each other as friends. Anran then asked, Are you two going out again later? Sankey shook her head. Given the situation outside, we wouldn't gain anything by going out. Besides, Brother Yu Gang's protective suit is torn. He needs to go back and mend it. I see. As Anran walked, she observed Sankey and Yu Gang, only then realizing that their protective suits were patched upon patched, and even their helmets had cracks. The pants of their protective suits were even more severely damaged, with 2 or 3 patches on the knees. Where do you two live now? I'll come find you later, Anran asked. Sankey, I live in a camp tent, position 37. Understood. Anran nodded. Before long, the three returned to the camp. Anran waved at Song Sankey. I'm going to the exchange office first. Okay. Sankey also waved back at her, then quickly ran towards the tent. And Ran entered the exchange office, found the same counter as yesterday, and took out everything from her backpack. Due to her limited strength, all the green plants she had collected along the way were discarded. Now her bag only contained 28 clumps of large thistle. So much? The staff member Xiaoli was dumbfounded, looking at Ran with disbelief. Yes, they're all moderate value. I exchanged some yesterday. And Ran didn't want to argue, so she deliberately reminded Xiaoli, your leader calculated it at 6 points per gram for me. I remember. Xiaoli nodded vigorously, and without calling his leader, he directly took in the large thistle. After individual testing and weighing, it totaled about 84 jin, which converts to over 42,000 grams. Xiaoli looked at Ran again, muttering to himself. With over 80 jin of stuff in her backpack, he wondered how this young girl managed to carry it back. However, the demonic contamination value of this batch of large thistle was even lower than yesterday's, so exchanging it at 6 points per gram should be fine. Xiaoli calculated twice with a calculator and confirmed the exchange amount, a total of 252,798 points. Is that correct? And Ran nodded and asked, how much is a set of protective clothing here? New ones are 5,000 a set, including boots, mask, and helmet. Used, half new ones are 1,800, Xiaoli replied. And Ran clicked her tongue. New ones were too expensive, much pricier than at the base. Never mind, she'd buy 2 used sets for Sanki. After all, she had saved her. Give me 2 used sets. Okay. Xiaoli was delighted to hear that this customer wanted to exchange for other things, so he quickly brought 2 sets of protective clothing, each packaged in a carrying case, and Ran opened them to inspect, making sure nothing was missing, then asked, do you sell energy guns? Small ones. Xiaoli shook his head. Only base mercenaries are equipped with energy guns. We don't have any in stock here. Seeing Ran frown, he quietly added, an energy flamethrower is also good. You can buy one and try it. Its power is no less than an energy gun. It just consumes a lot of energy and money, Xiaoli didn't say, but the young girl would find out once she used it. And Ran's eyes lit up, and she quickly asked, how much is a flamethrower? Outside, there were only insects and frenzied mutated creatures. Having a flamethrower would be good, and she still wanted to explore the wilderness again. A small one is 9,009, and comes with a primary energy core, which can be used continuously for half an hour. Xiaoli introduced. A medium one is 13,800, also comes with a primary energy core, and can be used continuously for 10 minutes. Wait, and Ran's heart stirred when she heard energy core, remembering the energy crystals she had collected from the large thistle. She quickly asked, can I see the energy core? The staff member handed Ran a dark, egg-sized stone. This is it. And Ran picked up the energy core. It was heavy, like some kind of ore. She tried to activate her ability, and suddenly a prompt popped up. Do you want to collect? And Ran jumped in surprise, quickly put down the energy core in her hand, and secretly glanced at Xiaoli. Xiaoli was oblivious, still looking at his valuable customer with anticipation. And Ran composed herself, suppressing her excitement, and casually asked, how many points for this if bought separately? Xiaoli, 3,500 points. So expensive. Can I get a discount if I buy more? How about 3,000? And Ran fiddled with the black stone in her hand, trying to bargain. No, the price of energy cores is set by the camp. I can't make that decision. Oh, never mind then. And Ran didn't bother to haggle further. She wanted to go back and verify her hypothesis soon. So she bought a small flamethrower, 10 energy cores, along with 2 sets of protective suits, and 30 bottles of primary mental recovery potions, spending over 140,000 points in total. Her account still had 114,000 points remaining. And Ran then went to the Tulu bar counter and paid for 10 more days of rent, spending 5,000 points. Now her account had 109,000 points left, which she would keep for now. Back in her room, Anran ignored her exhaustion and immediately took out 10 energy cores. To prevent failure, she first used her skill on one energy stone. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Collection successful. Experience +2. You obtained a small primary energy crystal. Absorbing it can increase 0.2 free attributes. Wahaha! It really was like this. Anran was overjoyed. She gripped the soybean-sized crystal in her hand and absorbed it. Her attribute panel prominently showed an additional 0.2 free attributes. She added the 0.2 attribute to her speed, and after feeling it, there didn't seem to be much difference. But small gains add up, and Anran didn't mind it at all. Heaven knew how much she wished her attributes could be enhanced. Now that she had found a shortcut, she would continue, no matter how much money it cost. Anran, in one go, collected the remaining 9 energy cores, consuming 5 points of spirit. The last few times she collected 2 or 3 at once, and it was still successful. After absorbing all the collected energy crystals, she added all the free attributes to her speed. This was her weakness and the foundation for escaping, so it had to be prioritized. Now, looking at the panel again, Chapter 8, New Entries. Name, Anran. Bone age, 18. Race, human. Constitution, 10. Slightly stronger than the average person. Important note, a strong constitution can resist demonic contamination. Agility, 7. Your speed is already comparable to a human sprinter. Strength, 7. Your strength does not match your identity at all. Spirit, 12. Barely enough to use the skill 12 times. Update note. The higher the spirit, the more targets the skill can affect, and the more surprises you will get. Skill. Primary Gathering Technique L51. XP 3,912 5,000. Anran was surprised and carefully reviewed the new entries on the panel again. The higher the spirit, the more targets the skill can affect. So, was the reason she was able to gather energy blocks because her spirit had improved. What about Mutant Beast? Could they be gathered too? The more Anran thought about it, the more excited she became, her eyes shining brightly. If she could really gather Mutant Beast, she wouldn't lack meat to eat in the future. Heavens know how expensive the braised mutated beast meat in the small canteen was. A small plate sold for over 200 points, which was simply inhumane. Let's go try it now. Nowadays, the outside was covered in high-contamination mutant beasts scorched by ability users and mercenaries, so she could just go and scavenge for scraps. Anran drank a few sips of water to calm herself down, stuffed 2 sets of protective suits into her backpack, and carried it downstairs. She went to the exchange window again and exchanged for over 20 energy blocks, and her account points suddenly dropped to 1,400. After thinking about it, she bought 10 high-grade nutrient bars and put them in her backpack as emergency rations. Seeing that only 400 remained in her account balance, Anran was finally satisfied. Now that she was penniless and light-hearted, she no longer had to worry about her mother and uncle secretly touching her account. She walked to the front of tent number 37 and knocked on the tightly closed tent door. "Sankey, are you there?" Coming. The tattered leather door was pulled open, and Sankey poked his head out and pulled Anran inside. "Come in quickly. There are too many flying insects outside." Anran bent down to enter the tent and saw a dusty moisture-proof mat spread inside, with several people sitting on it. 2 women and 2 men, plus Sankey, made 5 people in total. They weren't surprised to see Anran, and greeted her one after another. "Hello, come in and sit." A woman put down the tattered protective suit she was mending, stood up, and picked up the kettle on the small stove to pour water. Anran nodded in greeting. "Hello, everyone. This is my brother and sister-in-law, and that is Yu Gang's sister-in-law." Sankey introduced them briefly, took the hot tea his sister-in-law brought over, and handed it to Anran. Anran sat cross-legged and took a sip of the hot tea. It was sweet, as if mutated sweet root had been added to it. Looking around, she saw that the 10-plus square meter space was divided into two sides by patchwork curtains, with each side having its own bedding and items. It seemed the 5 of them lived in the same tent. And Rand finished the tea, took 2 boxes out of her backpack, and pushed them toward Sankey. "These are protective suits. A gift for you and Brother Yugang." Sankey was stunned, his dark little face gradually turning red, and he said angrily, "And Rand, what do you mean? Why are you giving me protective suits?" And Rand smiled and said, "Can it be a welcome gift? We haven't seen each other for several years, and we might form a team to go into the wilderness later. I don't want my teammates to get injured halfway and delay things." Sankey rubbed his eyes, avoiding looking at the 2 protective suits on the mat, and muttered softly, I wouldn't delay things." And Rand continued, "Don't push them away. We are going to be teammates in the future. Treat these 2 protective suits as an advance investment from me. Hurry up and try them on to see if the size fits. If they don't fit, you can exchange them." Sankey was dazed for a moment, then nodded shyly. He secretly made up his mind to pay and ran back the points in the future. The other people in the tent quickly came over to thank her. "Thank you so much. We really needed protective suits. You've spent so much money." And Rand smiled, stood up, and said, "I'm going back first. I'm going to take a look outside in a while. Do you want to come along?" Sankey nodded repeatedly. "Okay, I'll go." And Rand said goodbye to them and returned to her room with her backpack. She took out all 27 energy stones and began to use her supernatural ability. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering skill successful. XP +2. You have obtained a primary energy crystal, which can increase free attributes by 0.3 after absorption. And Rand was surprised. Why was there an extra 0.1? She thought for a moment, took out her wristwatch, and measured the energy stones one by one, discovering that the energy values they contained were different. Some high, some low, but all belonged to the established primary value range, which was within 200 energy. And Rand was thoughtful and picked one with the lowest value to gather. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering skill successful. XP +2. You've obtained a primary energy crystal, which can increase free attributes by 0.1 after absorption. Damn! So if the energy value of the energy block is below 100, it only provides 0.1 free attributes. Careless! And Rand was annoyed, and quickly picked out the 3 energy stones with values below 100 to exchange with Xiao Li later. After gathering a few more times, and Rand basically figured out the free attributes that could be gathered based on the energy stone values. Below a value of 100, you can only get 0.1 free attributes. Between 100 and 150, you get 0.2. Above 150 and up to 200, you can gather 0.3 points of attributes. And Rand found a small notebook and wrote these values down to avoid making the same mistake again. Subsequently, she used 2 bottles of primary mental strength recovery potion and gathered all the energy stones with energy values above 150. Adding the previous ones, she obtained a total of 4 points of free attributes. After thinking for a long time, she added 3 points to spirit and 1 point to agility, then packed up the remaining 12 energy stones and went downstairs to find Xiao Li for an exchange. But Xiao Li was currently serving customers, and Rand didn't want to wait around and waste time, so she simply went out to the wilderness. Arriving at the courtyard gate, she saw Sankey and Yugang wearing the protective suits she had given them, waving at her. Sankey's brother was wearing Yugang's old, tattered protective suit, which had an extra patch on the knee. He was holding a notched short knife and looking around nervously. "Where are we going?" Sankey asked, leaning in close to Rand. And Rand patted the flamethrower slung over her shoulder. "We're going to look for mutant beast. If we find any we can eat, we'll bring them back." Sankey thought she was going to hunt mutant beast. He hesitated for a moment but nodded. "Okay, I'll listen to you." Thus the four of them set off towards the wilderness. At this moment, thick smoke was billowing around the camp. Many scavengers were watching, and in the distance, hundreds of mercenaries and ability users were clearing out insects and mutated creatures. And behind the mercenaries, many people were following, and one look was enough to know they were trying to scavenge for scraps. But the chances were very slim. Any mutated creature with a low demonic contamination value, or any value at all, had already been taken away by the mercenaries. Chapter 9. Mutated Rat Swarm. Anran and Sanki's group stepped over the scorched insect corpses covering the ground as they advanced, stopping to test every scorched mutated beast they encountered. Unsurprisingly, they were all heavily contaminated. Neither the meat nor the bones had any value, leaving no possibility of picking up any scraps. "Let's split up and search," Anran suggested. She couldn't test her supernatural ability in front of Sanki and the others, so she had to temporarily send them away. Sanki nodded. "All right." Thus the group dispersed, searching forward with 30 to 40 meters of distance between them. Before long, Anran encountered a mutated rabbit with scorched fur. There were hacking marks on its head, and it looked to be at least 1.5 meters long. Seeing no one around, Anran resolutely reached out to touch it and activated her gathering skill. A flash of white light appeared between her palms. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering skill successful. Experience points increased by 10. You obtained a piece of fresh, level 1 mutated rabbit meat, demonic contamination value 32. Consuming it for the first time permanently increases constitution by 1 point. Cannot be stacked. Immediately, a piece of bright red rabbit meat weighing about 4 or 5 caddies appeared beside her, and Ran was overjoyed. Her guess was correct. She really could use the gathering skill on Mutant Beast. Not only that, but the mutated beast meat she gathered for the first time actually had a special entry. She hurriedly stuffed the mutated rabbit meat into her backpack, and Ran's heart was pounding. This piece of mutated rabbit meat had to be kept for herself. She would never share something that could permanently increase her constitution. And Rand stood up and looked again at the mutated rabbit in front of her. It had already turned into a lump of black charcoal. It was truly charcoal. A breeze blew, and the charcoal scattered, no longer resembling its previous form. And Ran wasn't surprised. After all, after she used the gathering skill on mutated plants, the target would have the same effect. To put it bluntly, it was taking the essence and leaving the dregs. Thinking about it carefully, it was a bit terrifying. But Anran didn't care. She continued searching forward, this time picking up her pace. Whenever she saw a dark object ahead, she would rush over to check it. Sure enough, she discovered another dark, mutated hedgehog, the size of a wash basin. However, this hedgehog wasn't dead yet. It seemed to be on its last breath, twisting and struggling on the ground. Of course, it wasn't the hedgehog's body that was twisting, but the dozens of malformed tentacles on its back. Those black tentacles were each over 1 meter long, frantically hooking and coiling toward Anran, looking exceptionally gruesome. Anran wanted to avoid it, but with a sudden thought, she raised her flamethrower and sprayed the malformed tentacles of the mutated hedgehog. Those malformed tentacles retracted with a whoosh, and Anran seized the opportunity to rush over and reach out to perform the gathering skill. Ding! Consumed 1 point of spirit. Gathering skill successful. Experience points increased by 20. You obtained a level 2 energy crystal. Absorbing it permanently increases constitution by 1 point. Anran looked down at the crystal core in her hand, shocked. Was this something that could be inside a level 2 mutated beast? Even in the official textbooks published by the federal government, they only told citizens that only mutant beast above level 4 could possibly condense an energy crystal core. Yet the mutated hedgehog in front of her, regardless of its size or ability, didn't belong to level 4. Otherwise, how could it have been killed so easily? But shock was shock. Absorbing it quickly was the right thing to do. and Ran gripped the crystal core and silently thought, "Absorb." Instantly, a warm current flowed down her arm and through her whole body, and the crystal core in her palm quickly turned into powder. Looking at her panel again, her constitution attribute had indeed increased by 1 point. And Ran stood up. She glanced at the mutated hedgehog in front of her. It was completely motionless, and the malformed tentacles on its body hung limp like rows of rotting, blackened, parasitic worms. At the same time, wisps of black gas drifted out from it, gradually dissolving into the air. And Ran frowned. Just as she was about to look for Sankey and the others, she suddenly saw those mercenaries and ability users in the distance running back wildly. "Run! There's a mutated rat swarm." "Damn it! Where did so many mutated rats come from?" Some shouted loudly, others ran with all their might, their figures blurring as they sprinted. Sankey and the others also sprinted over, grabbed and ran, and started running. "It's terrible! A huge swarm of mutated rats! It's a massive sea of them! Hurry back to the camp!" Sankey roared while running, looking back from time to time with a terrified expression. And Ran saw it too. Black fog was rolling in from the distance, and faintly huge black mutant beasts were charging in from all directions. Her heart sank, and she didn't dare to hesitate, following Sankey and the others as they ran toward the camp. Fortunately, they weren't far from the camp, and soon they rushed into the courtyard with the crowd. "Close the gate! Close the gate! The mutated beast horde is coming!" Someone shouted, attempting to close the camp gate. "Get lost! You are not allowed to close the gate!" The armed guards fired a shot into the air, driving back the panicked crowd. There were still many mercenaries and ability users outside who hadn't entered. The camp guards couldn't let these people do as they pleased. The restless crowd was indeed intimidated and retreated. Some even went back to the earthen building to hide. And Ran and Sankey's group separated after entering the courtyard. Sanchi and Sibling and Yu Gang returned to their tent to pack their things, while Ran went to the exchange counter. Arriving at Xiaoli's exchange window, she took out 12 energy blocks and said with a dark face, "Exchange these for me. The values of these energy blocks are too low. They aren't worth 3,500 points at all." Xiaoli feigned surprise, a flash of guilt crossing his eyes. Seeing Ran's sullen expression, he didn't dare say much, and hurriedly took out a box of energy blocks, saying with an innocent look, "I only have these energy blocks on hand. You can pick." And Ran tested them one by one, specifically selecting those with values above 150. After putting the 12 selected energy blocks into her backpack, she then asked, "Are there any mid to high-level energy blocks? How much are they each?" Xiaoli put the box away and replied with a smile, "Mid to high-level energy blocks are very scarce. The base prioritizes supplying them to the guard force and the mercenary groups. We rarely have that stuff here." And Ran frowned, unwilling to give up, and pressed, "I just want to know the price. What is the difference between mid to high-level energy blocks and primary ones?" "Xiaoli, the difference is huge. Mid-level energy blocks cost at least 6,000 points and up, and high-level ones cost at least 10,000 plus. And they are priceless and marketless." And Ran glanced at her account. She only had 400 points. Forget it. She should just keep her feet on the ground. She didn't deserve any overnight success. Returning to her small room, Ran used the gathering skill on 10 of the 12 energy blocks, gaining 3 free attribute points, which she added entirely to speed. In the current situation, whoever runs fast lives long. When it really comes to fighting for one's life with strength, death is not far away. And Ran took out the mutated rabbit meat again, deciding to cook and eat it now. She rinsed it slightly with water and used a dagger to slice it into thin pieces, as this would make it easier to cook. She then went downstairs to find some dry branches, bringing them back to her room upstairs to build a fire and cook the meat. Fortunately, she had a small ear pot, so she could boil the 4 or 5 caddies of mutated rabbit meat in a few batches. When she scooped out the first pot of meat, Ran couldn't wait to eat it. The meat was tender and smooth, but due to the lack of seasoning, the taste was bland and carried the distinct gamey smell of rabbit meat. And Ran regretted not exchanging for some salt. After finishing one pot, she waited for a while, but her body felt nothing, and there was no notification about a constitution increase. And Ran was puzzled and ate the second pot. Chapter 10. Your mother wants you to go home. After finishing the second pot, and Ran finally felt a warmth flowing through all her limbs and bones. Looking at the panel again. Name, and Ran. Age, 18. Race, human. Physique, 12. Slightly stronger than an ordinary person. Agility, 11. Your agility already surpasses most humans, but in the eyes of an agility talent user, you are still moving in slow motion. Strength, 7. Spirit, 15/15, barely enough to use skills 15 times. Friendly reminder, the higher your spirit, the more ways you can cast skills. Skill, primary gathering technique, LV1. XP 3942, upgradable at 5000. Not bad. The spirit consumed by gathering earlier were also fully restored after eating 2 pots of mutated rabbit meat. Gaining 2 physique points in half a day, and Ran felt energetic, with inexhaustible strength throughout her body. As for the remaining meat, it couldn't be wasted. She wanted to see if a miracle would happen if she kept eating it. Of course, raw meat is difficult to preserve, so she had to cook it thoroughly. But the pot was too small, making cooking troublesome. She should go to the exchange point to buy a bigger pot. She should also buy a stove. Otherwise, lighting a fire on the ground would lead to too much heat loss and easily cause a fire. And Ran put on her backpack and went out, only to find the inside of the earthen building in chaos. Many people were walking hurriedly, while others stood by the railings looking down. And Ran also peered over and saw hundreds of people standing in the hundreds of square meters of the courtyard down the stairs. A dense crowd, most of whom appeared to be from the tent area. Backpacks and luggage were piled up beside them, and their faces showed they were still reeling from shock. At this moment the sky was dim, as if it were evening, and Ran looked up and saw that the tempered glass cover above the courtyard was dark and heavy with dense flying insects landing on it, blocking the daylight. What should we do? Outside it's all mutant beasts. How can mutant beasts compare to mutated insects? I think we're going to be trapped here. Damn insects, they're burrowing into the flesh. Hurry up and dig it out. This thing lays eggs in the flesh. If we get parasitized by them, we're finished. Help. Quick, check for me. I think I have an insect on my head. It's already burrowed in. Those without protective suits panicked, asking their companions to check their heads, faces, and arms. And Ran frowned, quickly pulled up her protective mask, sprayed a circle of insect repellent on herself, and then squeezed out of the earthen building through the crowd. The situation outside the earthen building was worse. Flying insects danced like snowflakes across the sky. These insects looked a bit like locusts and a bit like mosquitoes. Each one was the size of an adult's palm, and upon seeing Ran, they swarmed her. And Ran was frightened and quickly retreated back into the earthen building, where the gatekeeper complained fiercely. If you have nothing to do, can you stop wandering around? How many insects are you letting in by going back and forth? I'm sorry. And Ran quickly apologized, brushed the insects off her protective suit, and crushed them one by one with her foot. Returning to her small room, and Ran sent Sankey a message. Sankey, where are you? Sankey instantly replied, We're in room 48 on the second floor of building number 7. We just rented it. Where are you? And Ran, I'm also in building number 7, living in room 59 on the 4th floor. Sankey, what a coincidence. I'll come find you later. And Ran, okay. After a while, Sankey sent another message. And Ran, my sister-in-law said to tell you to stock up on water and food. We don't know when this insect disaster will end, and if the camp supplies run out, we'll be doomed too. And Ran immediately understood. Got it. I'm going to the water room to fetch water right now. Sankey, hurry up. I just got back from the water room, and there are lots of people queuing there. Got it. Ayn Rand closed the communication and picked up her water bottle, shaking it. Both water bottles were empty, having been used up earlier when she cooked the meat. Ayn Rand felt a tightness in her chest and immediately grabbed the 2 water bottles and left the room. Arriving at the water room on the first floor, sure enough, many people were queuing. Ayn Rand lined up at the back, looking around and silently counting the number of people. 200 to 300 people were crammed into the courtyard, plus the tenants of the 300-plus rooms in earthen building number 7, meaning the total number of people in the building wouldn't be less than 1,000. With so many people living in the same earthen building, eating, drinking, and sanitation was a major problem. If the camp supplies truly ran out, how many days could the people here last? The more Ayn Rand thought about it, the more uncertain she felt, slightly regretting that she had spent all her points. Fortunately, she still had many primary mental strength recovery potions in her bag. If things got really bad, she could just go out and gather a batch. She wouldn't starve to death. As she was thinking, she suddenly saw Zhang Xiaodong and a few others walking toward her. Ayn Rand pretended not to see them and turned her head away. But those people still approached her. Jiang Xiaoxiao even greeted her. Ayn Rand, so you live in building number 7. Ayn Rand tilted her head to look at her, feeling puzzled. What's wrong with living in building number 7? She asked. She felt that the looks these people were giving her held unclear intentions. Jiang Xiaoxiao smiled but said nothing. Zhang Xiaodong, standing next to her, chimed in. Your mother asked us to pass on a message telling you to go home early. She's worried something might happen to you outside. Ayn Rand scoffed internally. Her biological mother worried about her having an accident. Most likely the accidents would be brought about by her biological mother and biological sister. She remembered everything from her dream, and the words and actions of her biological mother and biological sister matched the dream perfectly. Seeing Ayn Rand remain silent, Qian Yifan, next to Zhang Xiaodong, suddenly spoke up, his face full of disdain. Ayn Rand, you're truly selfish. As soon as you gain a little ability, you ignore your biological mother. You'd rather live in a room costing 500 or 600 a day than give your mother living expenses. Ayn Rand sneered. That's right, I am selfish. Is that any of your business? Qian Yifan choked, and the disdain in his eyes intensified. No wonder your sister asked us to bring you back. With your rotten attitude, it'd be a miracle if you didn't cause trouble outside. Ayn Rand was surprised. My sister asked you to bring me back. What did she tell you? Why bring me back? She truly hadn't expected that her half-sister could convince Qian Yifan and the others. They were all arrogant talent users. Without benefit, who would help a girl with no background for no reason? Qian Yifan didn't answer, only saying coldly, Ayn Rand, once the insect disaster is over, you will return to the base with us. Ayn Rand sneered. What if I don't? That's not up to you. Qian Yifan's eyes flashed fiercely, and Rand's expression was icy. She narrowed her eyes at Qian Yifan. How is it not up to me? Are you going to kidnap me? Zhang Xiaodong, seeing the situation, quickly tried to mediate. Ayn Rand, Qian Yifan meant well. He's just impatient and speaks bluntly. You don't need to take it to heart. Ayn Rand glanced sideways at Zhang Xiaodong. I don't appreciate his good intentions. Besides, I'm impatient too. Why can he be calculating, but I can't? Also, what does my business have to do with him? Did Xu Xingxing give you some benefits? Seeing Ayn Rand being aggressive, Zhang Xiaodong frowned slightly. Ayn Rand, why have you become like this?